What's going on? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Corey. I am a graphic designer, art director based in Atlanta and New York. I am a dual resident if you ask me. If you're not new, thank you so much for coming back. Love to see you. Today, I'm just going to talk through my resume. Essentially, when I do my little question box on Instagram, people ask me a lot about how I ended up in the position that I'm in today. I'm going to tell that story as efficiently as possible. So if you're even remotely interested in hearing on how I went from student to full-time graphic designer to art director to freelance art director, then keep watching. So I think for my story in particular, it'd be best to start with like my high school era. It's significant to my story, but nothing about it is a requirement to get into the industry. I went to Brooklyn Technical High School, which is located in Brooklyn, New York, of course. I'm from Harlem. I did take that commute every day, Lord. Brooklyn Tech is a huge school as far as the capacity of the number of students, and it is one of New York City's specialized high schools. And so I'm not sure if all the specialized high schools were like this, but Brooklyn Tech in particular, similar to a college curriculum, you took your core classes for the first 2 years, and then after your sophomore year, you are asked to select a major where you would focus your studies on that major. You still took other stupid things like gym and so on, but you did focus on whatever your major was. Brooklyn Tech being an engineering school, a lot of the core classes included things like technical drawing and like heavy on the math and science. These are things I don't care about. And you think if you're going to a specialized high school, you would want to care about math and science. I honestly just went there because I got in and I wanted to leave my neighborhood. So that's that. At this school is where I discovered how much I did enjoy graphic design and things similar to it. The major I selected, there are a lot of options. They even had Gateway to Medicine, which is like a pre-med. Like there were a lot of options for majors, but I selected media communications, which consisted of classes like graphic design, studio art, which was our one and only required AP course, film and animation, things like that. It was in that time where I was like, oh, this is like I'm good at this. I can do this. I enjoy it. Now, the rest of my classes I wasn't doing too hot in. I'm gonna keep it a buck. I was not doing too well. And so when it came time to apply to college, my portfolio was the way out. And everyone in that major had a portfolio because of that AP course. You know, when you take an AP, there is an exam at the end of the class. We didn't have an exam per se. We had a AP portfolio. You had to meet the requirements of that AP portfolio in order to pass said class. And so I had a portfolio with a huge breadth of work. I used it to apply to so many schools, and I applied to mostly art schools. I applied to Parsons. I believe I applied to SCAD. I applied to, which would have been crazy because I didn't know I was going to live in Georgia anyway, but that's neither here nor there. I don't remember all the schools I applied to. I just know that they were art schools. I believe I only applied to 2 standard 4-year universities. That was Syracuse and Temple University. According to my memory, I got into everything. I must have got denied from something, but I can't remember. I've gotten a lot of acceptance letters. But I ended up choosing Temple University, which was so like opposite of my plan when I first started applying. But at the last minute, I said, hey, I want to get a degree in something that is not fine arts. I just wanted to have like an additional learning experience outside the core classes. Like, let me major in something that's adjacent to what I learned, but that had more avenues. In my head, and this isn't the case, don't take what I say as Bible, but I felt like my fine arts degree wouldn't go as far as like a BA or a BS. So once I got to Temple, I enrolled in the advertising program because they had an art direction track, which was perfect. The only caveat was that the art direction track did not come with graphic design courses, which is weird. Maybe not, I don't know, but to me, it was weird, so I had to finesse my way into classes for the technical skill. Because of that, I am largely self-taught in graphic design, but I was able to learn some principles by sneaking into other courses that were not offered to me in my major. And if you are a college-age student and there's a course that you want to take, but your major does not allow you to take that course, you can get written into other courses. It's important for you to network and fight for yourself, advocate for yourself, and someone else will eventually advocate for you as well. Remember that, that's a gem. So when I got to Temple, the art direction track is the same thing as a major. It's a major within your major. So you would take the core classes for your major, like the requirements for your major, but you would have certain courses that are focused on art direction, and you would complete a set of courses that would prepare you for that, if that makes sense. And so advertising, I was learning things like media planning, media buying, copywriting, regular advertising 101, things like that. And then I would have art direction courses on top of that. The art direction classes were tough. I enjoyed the major a lot. Imagine showing up to class and what you're doing is like analyzing commercials, and your homework is to pick your favorite advertisement and like dissect it and things like that. Like I thoroughly enjoyed that major, once I got in there, I swore I was going into the ad world. Like, I was going to be little black girl Don Draper. I was going to be little Marcus Graham. Like, that's what it was. But my goal and everyone else's goal essentially there is to build a portfolio that by the time you graduate, you are able to present and land your first big job. I had, again, a breadth of work in that portfolio. I'm not saying any of the work was great, but I did have a portfolio. And while we're on the topic of portfolios, your work should speak for itself and it should be great. But what's important when you're applying for jobs is not always about how it looks. Of course, how it looks is the first impression. If you're going to something very skill-based like graphic design, then yes, how it looks is super important. But on top of how it looks across the board in all of these professions that require a portfolio is the thinking. Can you show great design thinking, strategy? Can you show that you know how to solve a problem and communicate visually? That's what's important. Another gem for you. You're welcome. Towards the end of college, I applied for MAPE, which is the Multicultural Advertising Intern Program. This program, if you get into the program, would place students at some of the top advertising agencies in the country. And so I got into the program, thank the Lord, and I was placed at Momentum Worldwide. I was placed at the Momentum Worldwide in St. Louis. They do have a nice size New York office, but I was placed in St. Louis. The appeal of MAPE is that you also enter into these agencies with other MAPE students. And so the internship program at the agency may have say they have 10 interns and maybe 3 of you came from MAPE. That's dope. You have a friend with you at all times. We go to MAPE events. You go to your internship together. Like, it's cool. I was by myself. There were other interns there at the agency, but I was the only MAPE intern and I was the youngest. So it felt weird for me. It was kind of hard to relate to the other interns and stuff like that, but whatever. I rocked it. I did my thing, and I added more to my portfolio through that program. I was able to experience like an ad agency. The interns had one big assignment for the whole summer. So we worked on a pitch in which we were able to pitch to a real brand. Our ideas, we split up into 2 teams. It was a whole thing. I loved it. Though I loved the experience itself, I knew I did not necessarily like the industry. And woe is me. I just spent all this time at school learning about advertising, and I don't even like the ad agencies. So I had some thinking to do. So then I started researching other avenues and learning the difference between being in-house and at an agency and boutique agencies versus big agencies and the different types of boutique agencies there are and how broad the options are to be in an industry working as a graphic designer or eventually an art director. So I learned a lot in that process. I am very grateful for that internship experience in particular because I just learned a lot about myself and what I was looking for and not looking for my future in my career. The following summer is when I graduated from college, and because I had been spending my entire time at college working a job, almost full-time hours until I graduated, in which I actually did accept a salary position at a retail store as an assistant manager, I was super comfortable. If you watch my Quit My 9 to 5 with me, you saw that I have expressed that I get really, really comfortable in positions that I've held for a long time. I had been there for basically the entirety of my college career, and I had learned so much about retail and the business of retail. And to be honest, it wasn't quite far off from what I was learning in school. It just wasn't in the industry I wanted to be in, and I wasn't designing or art directing. So that was that. I was so comfortable. I had stayed there for past graduation. After a certain point, I was like, all right, Corey, we got to get back on track. We got to figure this out. So I quit, no plan. But at the time, I was still living in Philly. My rent was $467. Yeah, good times. I had no kids. I felt like I had not a lot to lose, so I just quit. I had no plan, no job, no anything. And trust me, I was applying. Anywhere I could, I was applying within Philly. I didn't want to leave Philadelphia, but I was applying everywhere. I had another internship while I was in college as a graphic design intern. I'm not sure if I applied to work there full time. I don't remember, but either way, Philly wasn't biting. So while I was still in Philly waiting for my lease to end, basically, or waiting for something to happen, that is when I began freelancing. And this is the part of my career where I say I really was getting out the mud. I was finding clients any which way possible. My very, very first paid gigs were from my peers, and I was charging $30 to design people's resumes. And if any of my friends are watching this now, they probably had a resume that was designed by me, and it probably looks like shit. To my standards now, other people might think it looked good. But anyway, I was designing resumes for $30 a pop, eventually $50, something light. And From there, I started going on Craigslist in the gig section and looking for anyone looking for any type of graphic design, logo, website design, so on and so forth. I landed quite a few of my first clients through there. I specifically remember I had a client who was a jewelry brand owner, and I didn't know this lady from Adam, but she posted on Craigslist. I responded, and she wanted to get her Shopify website up and running for $200. At the time, that was so much money to me because that's almost half my rent. You know what I'm saying? And I was 21. I didn't know any better. I was super excited to get this gig. So once I did land it, I did the work. I was miserable the whole time. I had never used Shopify before. She'll know that, but it don't matter. And that's another story for another day on how to market yourself. But I did it. I finished her website, got my little $200. I started posting a little bit here and there about what I do so that I was able to attract more clients. I started making like rate sheets and things that I definitely do not do today. At the time, that is where my mind was for my marketing, so that's what I did. And it worked. It didn't work for the clientele that I would like today, but when I was charging less, my marketing matched what I was charging. From there, I started getting more clients by word of mouth. Now that I have all these actual projects under my belt through Craigslist, the resumes, so on, word of mouth started working. And from there, I started working with like college organizations like the Harvard Black Law Students Association, the Harvard Law Black Students Association, something like that. Sorry, y'all. I did a bunch of logos over time. I was surviving basically up until my lease ended. When my lease ended, I moved back home to my mom's house in New York. I picked up a bartending job and I continued to freelance. My freelancing experience at this point was more so of me learning about the business itself. So I'm getting burned quite often because my contracts are lacking. I am charging inappropriately. Like, I'm learning a lot of things along the way in this experience. And again, I'm grateful for that time that I took then. I didn't have anyone around me who was freelancing at the time in that industry or similar. Besides my stepdad, who was and is currently a freelancer, he's director. So I did learn a lot from him. And everything else I learned from here on YouTube, basically, or through trial and error, unfortunately, but fortunately. By the grace of God, I landed my first full-time role at a boutique marketing firm in Manhattan, and I was a marketing assistant / graphic designer. How do I describe the role? So this marketing firm was the middleman for production between companies who had a physical item as a part of their marketing plan and the target audience / recipient / whomever. The influencer industry was a thing at this time. And so the same way we get PR packages now, in 2015, 16, and prior, PR packages were a thing. If a company wanted to send a PR package to this list of people, we were the middleman who would actually produce the box and the items or whatever. We would produce a PR package. If maybe the PR item was this really gorgeous plant that was personalized or whatever, we handled that. So through that role, I learned things like working with vendors, sourcing vendors. I learned how to read tech packs. I learned the process of approvals. I learned attention to detail because sometimes I was doing the approvals. I learned on the graphic design side, I learned how to do proper mock-ups. I learned how to think critically when it comes to physical items because, for example, this is a direct example of something that I would mock up and produce at that agency. These notebooks you get in swag bags all the time. When they have this little strap on them, the strap is something that you have to take into account when you are putting artwork onto the notebook, right? So when this isn't on here, this is not centered and it looks crazy to me. But if this was centered and you use this, then this would be blocking part of the logo. Things like that I learned how to think of at this job. I lasted there a little under a year due to unforeseen circumstances, and then I moved on to the role that I most recently left, which was a creative agency based in Brooklyn. This agency was one that did a lot of social impact work. Not a lot, they did strictly social impact work. And so as someone who has no background in organizing, politics, none of the above, I came in with just my skill. And that was difficult for me, but that's something that I really, really enjoyed was learning on the job because I'm only a few years removed from college. So learning was very much a part of my everyday life. And so now I'm able to continue to make it a part of my everyday life. And I learned a ton at this agency, but this is where I went from. I first started there as a junior graphic designer. From there, I continued getting promoted until I was an art director. And, of course, I learned a ton at this agency as well. I learned like the most I've ever learned at this agency as far as real world hands-on experience. In particular, I learned a lot about event production because we did a lot of that. And a lot of the projects that I was on required event production. Again, with the sourcing vendors and making connections like that, and learning more about printing and learning more about fabrication. These were all things that I learned there. You all know how that went. If you don't, go ahead and watch this video. But other than that, since I have left, I am now back in the scrappiness of freelancing. I am blessed to now have built an audience online and kind of established myself in this lane. So I do receive a lot of incoming clients through word of mouth or through people finding me online. I haven't been able to pitch as much as of late. However, I do want to get back into the practice of pitching. I want to expand the type of clients I'm working with and the type of work I'm doing. I do want to formalize my business and expand my business so that I'm able to work with other graphic designers, such as a bunch of you who need work. I would love to offer work to you all through the work that I get. I am still doing things like event production. I'm doing a ton of branding work now. And throughout this time, I've also established myself as an illustrator as well. So I get a lot of work for illustrations. I haven't done as much illustration since I've been freelancing. I believe the last couple of projects I've done were with XO Nicole for some articles and VH1 last year. That is something I get emails about a lot. And so I'm in a place now where I'm actually able to turn down projects, and I like that. I mean, I don't like it, but I like that I have that problem, basically. But yeah, so from here, I'll be working on building a business. I'm building an agency of my own. I don't even like calling it an agency, but I guess that's what it is. I just want to continue what I'm doing and make it bigger and better. So if you're interested in seeing that journey, I will be somehow formalized. I have to think of a plan on how I'm going to do that, but I will be formalizing some kind of series on the development of my business here where you can actually see me like literally build the business, do my website, do my own branding, all those things. I'm freelancing now, and it is helping to bulk my resume. I'm able to work with a bunch of different companies on a large range of work. But that's not to say I won't eventually go back to work. I don't know. I don't see that in the near future. But if the opportunity presents itself, I would love for a company that I really like and admire to see me and know me and create a role for me. That's how big I want to be. Or I want them to see me and know me and be like, hey, Corey, this is the role for you. Like, this just opened up, like something personal like that. Like, I need that call, and God's going to tell me when it's time. But that being said, if you do have any questions, please, of course, feel free to leave a comment below, and I will chit chat with y'all there. And thank you so much for watching if you lasted this long. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.